All of you are welcome to the group. I hope that this video shows you that. In fact, you do sign up. Check out tokenizedthreads.com if you guys want to buy some cool crypto gear to help the channel. In the next sentence, there will be a link. We just put out a whole new line. You guys are more than welcome to go check that out if you want to. Having said that, things are finally starting to look up in these markets. It's also on Black Monday, so you must be scared, right? Because everyone believed today would be a very bad day for the market. Is it too early to say that this is it? The bottom has dropped and we're about to go crazy? We're not, though. But this is a great beginning. That's a great start. And it's great to see the market beginning to settle down. There's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm going to list the things we need to see in order to stop another crash. On the other hand, the market as a whole is worth about $2.5 trillion right now, so nothing too crazy. Bitcoin is still less than 80K. That was for a short time when it did get back 80K. It didn't last very long at all. Still, if we look at what's going on, we can see that XRP is down below $90 and still trying to find some movement to get back to the $2 plus support zone, but the market as a whole is still down like old coins. We can see that there isn't much green in the top 100 stocks that have gained or lost value in the last week. There is a lot of red there. Like I said, we need to do a lot more before we get ahead of ourselves and even become positive again. This is because many old coins are down and have been for a couple of weeks. But even while we wait for things to actually turn bullish, we could still look for signs or hints that the markets are going to bounce back in a big way. I think H-bar is a great currency right now. The H-bar is up about 10%. Around 15 cents, it did start to gain a little ground again. I'm not sure if this is the bottom for altcoins and the market as a whole just yet because Bitcoin is still so popular. As I said, we still have a lot of work to do even on Bitcoin's end since we are still below 80,000. I will talk about that in a moment, but first let's look at the warning signs, okay? On the weekend, we were warned that Monday could be another Black Monday. Jim Cramer, a famous financial analyst, said that the market would be stable on that day and that people on social media would not believe him. Cramer said that the market would crash badly on that day, similar to Black Monday in 1987. But unlike what he thought would happen, the Nasdaq finished the day slightly higher, while the S&P 500 and Dow Jones both slightly fell. This difference between what Cramer said would happen and what actually happened led to a lot of talk online. Many people called it Green Monday because of the unexpected market performance. These discussions showed how wrong Cramer's prediction was. Of course, some people found it funny that his prediction might be wrong about how the market would move, even though we already know that to be true. Here's the crazy thing. I told you guys over the weekend that I thought there would be a nice move on Monday, and I don't think it will be that gloomy. Now, this is what the S&P 500 looks like. When we look at the 3-week chart, which shows the direction from about December 2022, when crypto's bear market lows were reached, things look pretty good right now. You could draw this in two different ways if you set your mind to it. Based on some of these other candle bodies, you could draw it like this and say, okay, what we lost is completely, in other words, we're still gloomy. You can also use something like light wicks. When I do this, I like to base my moves on where the big trend would be. I check the trend line. After that, we start to move off of that. We just held up through the 2023 and 2024 cycles as well. We're still holding on to this, If you really want to go all the way back into the macro, you could also draw it all the way back to March 2020. Also, you can draw this in more than one way. You could draw it this way and say, okay, well, based on the bear market lows of 2022, we have a nice little wick here and a slight wick below it. Just like the March candle, the wick is already below it. This has been gone for 3 weeks. We can draw this in this way if you really want to. However, this is a 3-week chart, which means that we have almost 10 days until this ends for good. If this starts to close much higher than some earlier highs, maybe all the way back to March and February 2024, let's say that we close above this level, then I think that things will start to move up again toward the end of this month and into May. However, the trend has not only been kept up by the S&P 500.I, I've been thinking about this in terms of the Nasdaq. This is also on the 3-week time frame. This now goes all the way back to the lowest point in 2020. As of now, the perfect trend is still being tested and standing up. The Dow Jones has had very similar price changes all the way back to March 2020. The charts tell us that we don't need to be scared right now. If anything, we shouldn't be worried about price action. That's why I believe that a lot of the bearish movement in the space has come from news stories that are too dramatic, something like the Jim Cramer Black Monday news. I think everyone was too upset about this. Some of their roles were sold. They began to buy a lot of shorts and maybe even some put options, and I believe that's the reason why things are getting a little tight around here. Do I think this could quickly get worse and turn into a much bigger squeeze? 100%. We've seen it many times, in fact. Solana is a good example of this, in my opinion. If we actually look at Solana, and I remember this because it was a big deal in the market at the time, all of a sudden everyone said, okay, Solana is dead. Because of FTX, it's done. It happened in 2022, right? Before January, no one had enough Solana. In the end, there was a big squeeze that lasted until about $30 were left. The amount was about $26, $20 or $26, right on. But it kept going. Okay, over the course of the year, we kept cutting a little bit. Then, of course, in 2024, things started to go through the roof again, crossing $100. This, of course, caused us to reach a high point of about $260. When the bear market was at its worst, though, everyone was short Solana to be squeezed all the way through. I think that will happen again here while everyone is still moving without thinking about it. In spite of all the talk about tariffs and the news, there are still a lot of people who look scared. BlackRock, for instance, says that it seems likely that we are in a recession right now. When did BlackRock start being honest? They'll never do it. Because of this, I don't believe we are in a recession right now, but I believe we are on our way there. And even if we are in a crisis, I think we're about to come out of it and start to recover. And I think that's why I don't pay too much attention to BlackRock and what these big funds say. Which of these ideas makes the most sense in terms of a recession? I believe we are getting close to one because I still believe we will have a lot of problems in the banking sector by 2026. I think that the amount of debt we're taking on right now is going to reach levels that we can't afford to keep up with. This is because our tax money has been almost enough to cover the interest payments on our debt. I think that when that happens, things will start to break in a big way. That's why I don't think the fears of a recession right now are anything to worry about. In the long run, I think they will be a big problem, but I don't think we should be worried about them in 2025. However, the taxes have also been a worry for everyone. As we can see, 70 countries have already reached out to the president to talk about new trade deals. This is now coming from Secretary Besant. We're not sure if this is true. We're not sure if they're just trying to sell us something or not, but if this is true, it's likely that the market will start to bounce back big time after that. I think it's likely that the relief rise will happen again. To find out what happens with this, we'll have to wait and watch all week. I think that there will be a lot more news about this and a bit more understanding about it throughout the week, but we'll have to wait for it. We don't really have everything in front of us right now because most of it is secret. Besides that, I'm bringing this up because a lot of people make great content. This one, the modern investor, have seen his videos. His new subject is a $40,000 Bitcoin. If this is true, we're about to see a 40,000 Bitcoin crash. Everyone hold on tight. Things are about to go badly. This is now coming from Trump through Truth Social. On top of their already record-setting tariffs, China put in place retaliatory taxes on 34% of our goods yesterday, tariffs that aren't based on money and illegal subsidies for businesses.